Namaskar, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am extremely delighted to host my senior from GLC and someone who has carved out a name for herself in counsel practice at the Bombay Bar, uh, Mrs. Ankita Singhania. Ankita practices as an arguing counsel before the Bombay High Court, the Supreme Court of India, the National Company Law Tribunal, the Securities Appellate Tribunal, and various other courts and tribunals. She began her journey as a law student at GLC and then went on to pursue her BCL at the University of Oxford. She has also been appointed as an arbitrator by the Honorable Bombay High Court as well as parties in various commercial disputes. She's also a member of the Bombay Bar Association Standing Committee and is someone who inspires all the lawyers to do well, and especially women who want to carve a name for themselves on the commercial side. Welcome to the podcast, Ankita ma'am.
Hi, good morning.
Sorry, Ankita.
Yeah, don't make me feel old.
Yes. So I will start with the golden question. What was your motivation behind pursuing law? Why law?
So, I've asked myself that as the years have gone by, only because it's quite a tough career path to choose for any aspiring budding lawyer. And what I found is initially I was attracted to the law because I was always more interested in the humanities section of courses in school, in junior college, etc. So either it was journalism or law or some form of writing. When I started, so that was the basis of applying to government law college. When I started government law college and I started studying the subjects that we had, that's when I realized I actually love the study of law as a theory in and of itself. It's something that my brain responds to. I enjoy the philosophy of Contract Act, tort, constitutional law very much. So purely as a theoretical interest, I found the subjects very interesting. Of course, once you start looking at legal practice and you experience it through internships or subsequently working either in law firms or in a counsel's chamber, the practice is equally exciting as well. But that being said, it of course needs a lot of hard work, as you know, as any budding lawyer knows. So my motivations were really the fact that I enjoyed the subject and it looked to me like something that my brain could grapple with.
So how was your life at GLC? And I was reading that you were the best student awardee. And of course, you went to Oxford, so you must have maintained an overall good academic and co-curricular record. So would you like to speak about it?
So I had a great time at GLC in the 5 years that I was there. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I know that in some quarters, GLC has a reputation that, there are not enough classes, there are not enough extracurricular activities to do. The infrastructure, perhaps, at least at that time, was not as good as the National Law School infrastructure. But honestly, I felt that GLC is such a training ground if you want to be in the career of law, because it shows you how no one is going to give you anything on a platter. And it's for you to make the best of what is out there and available to you, and be innovative, think on your feet. So I mooted through the 5 years. I had attended multiple mooting competitions. We had so many other activities, whether it was writing for the magazine, whether it was holding the Model United Nations, whether it was the debating section, whether it was doing panel discussions, and all this while also studying for your terms and interning, because in GLC, as you're aware, you can work throughout the year and not just be restricted to a few weeks or a few month internship. So I had a great time. I thought that the fact that GLC was a 5-minute walking distance from the High Court, it was situated in the area where most law firms in the city are based, was a huge advantage to any student. And I never found that there was any lack of infrastructure support or encouragement support for people who wanted to do things.
Yes. One more question. Towards your final year, you must have made up your mind to pursue the BCL, but then you joined counsel practice. It's interesting because you were awarded the Shell Centenary Scholarship to pursue BCL at Oxford, and then you came back to India and joined the chambers of Mr. Dwarkadas. So, could you tell us the factors that you had weighed in before you decided to pursue your BCL? And I'm especially asking this question because a lot of people question the relevance of an LLM if they want to pursue counsel practice.
So, Shiva, I'm so happy you asked that because you're absolutely right. A lot of young people who come to meet me also say, oh, but I want to do counsel practice. Is it really relevant to do an LLM? Especially because, LLMs can be quite costly. And if you want to come back and do something like counsel practice, that is something that will weigh in your mind because you don't have a steady source of income immediately. Coming back to your question, what were the factors that weighed with me? I wanted to do a course in higher studies in the law because, as I said, the theory of law fascinates me. So towards that end, I thought LLM was the natural step. I applied to numerous universities in the UK, in the US, based on my areas of interest. Idea for me was to get a better educational feedback and the quality of education, which sometimes perhaps you don't get here. The idea was also to see how people from other jurisdictions are viewing the law, the developments in the law, what is happening in France, in Germany, in the US, in the Netherlands, in a lot of the Eastern European countries, all of which students, come to any of these international universities. And I wanted to see what was the qualitative difference in the education of law abroad versus here. And I have to tell you, and to any student thinking about doing an LLM, take it from me, just go ahead and do it. It is the most educationally enriching experience that you will have. You may come from one of the best universities in India, and I know that India now has some incredible law colleges, but the exposure that you get in a good international university to the concepts of law is unmatched. The people you meet, the interactions you have, and the relationships you develop stand you in good stead for many, many years to come. And you don't know in what way the friends you make come back and are a part of your journey as a lawyer or as any other profession that you may choose, which is related to the law. I had the most incredible educational experience as a student, as a budding lawyer, as a human being in my LLM journey. If you look at it even from a very narrow compass, so how does it help you be a better counsel? How does it help you in counsel practice? See, any counsel or any advocate practicing in the High Court, what are your tools in trade? The ability to absorb information, analyze it, and then present it in the simplest manner possible to the judge and to the other side. The ability to hear an argument, break it down, and find a response to that argument. These things don't come in a vacuum. They come from study, they come from application, they come from practice. And an LLM teaches you that because the structure is such that for the first time, at least for me, I had the legal training of how one analyzes, assimilates information and presents it in a manner which is understandable to even a layperson, because as a lawyer you're dealing with so many specialized areas. You're dealing with construction contracts, you're dealing with shipping contracts, you're dealing with intellectual property. All of this, I mean, we are generalists. We are not specialists as lawyers. But how to ask the right question, how to look for the right information, how to break it down in your head and fit it within what you're trying to present as your case is something that every lawyer must have. And it's not an ability that you just magically acquire one day, when you decide that I'm going to start practicing. It's something that comes from effort, practice, and training. And an LLM is a very important tool in getting that kind of practice, getting that kind of training. So why would you not want to train better in your to be profession? So my advice to everyone who asks me is always, even if you're incurring some amount of debt in the process of doing your LLM, you must do it. In fact, one of my biggest regrets is that even though I had an offer to stay back and do a PhD in Oxford, I didn't. I decided to come back, and now in hindsight, I wish I had. But please go ahead, do an LLM. It is a life-changing experience.
And in the hindsight, back in 2007, you also joined the chambers of the legendary Mr. Janak Dwarkadas. What were the factors that you weighed in before joining his chambers? Because he does a lot of heavy commercial litigation. Yeah. And how has your experience been working under his guidance and at his chambers for nearly a decade?
So, what were the factors that weighed with me? I think that is well known. As you said, the legendary Dwarkadas, he was as much of a legend then as he is now. But so to be more specific, the idea for any young junior, as it was for me, and that was the advice I also got at the time from seniors at the bar, is that you must join a senior who has a diverse practice and who does some bit of volume, only because as a junior, it's very important for you to see different kinds of matters on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So Janak Bhai, of course, as you know, does some of the most seminal matters. But the lure of his practice really is in the fact that he does a lot of everyday matters, which you need to be involved in to understand how a preparation work for a matter should be done, how a simple matter should be made simpler to be presented in court, how a complicated matter should be broken down. See, as a junior, as a mid-level counsel, your daily, so to speak, daily fare in court is not a fare of seminal matters or complicated matters. It's a fare of regular matters, mid-sized matters, which you do in volume so that you are able to spread your work across different fields. You're not aiming to do only one big matter in a month, like a lot of people do perhaps in England, because they have the luxury in that sense of time and charging according to the jurisdiction that they're in. Whereas in India, the practice is more volume based. So the lure of someone like Janak Bhai is not only is he doing really high end, cutting edge work, but he's also doing everyday matters which give you an opportunity to learn. They give you an opportunity to be involved. They give you an opportunity to assist him in that you can prepare a list of dates, you can prepare a note of the case law, you can read his briefs, you can acquire the ability to jump from matter to matter, fact to fact, so as to see how quick you can get and how much work you can do in a day. So that I feel is invaluable, because I think thinking on your feet and nimbleness is one of the things that every lawyer should have. And doing, having a volume practice, doing, between 5 to 10 matters a day really makes you, forces you rather to quickly be able to move from matter to matter, at the same time being utterly accurate, because you know that your senior is relying on what you are going to tell him. And that's how you build trust with him, that your senior knows that this person has read, this person is going to give me accurate information, this person is not going to give me half information. So again, as I said, like everything in law, it takes time and practice. And if you're doing 5 to 10 matters a day, then that practice makes perfect over time.
Wow. And today now you have several juniors working with you who would obviously benefit from your rich experience. You started your independent practice, your own chambers, and I want to ask you the challenges that you face, because on the face of it, it looks easy, right? But I'm sure that when you start your own practice, there would be several hurdles that would come your way. And how do you deal with them? And here, I'll be extremely happy, Ankita, if you could also address the time factor, which you mentioned. Uh, for instance, if a law student wants to start his or her own chambers, some of them want to do it right after law school. Some of them join a senior and they work for a number of years with them and then decide to pursue an independent path. While some of them work with a law firm for a while, sometimes get appointed as partners and then start their independent practice. So, how important is this time and experience factor in starting your practice? And yes, your own experience of independent practice.
So I'll answer your second question first, which is my experience of independent practice, because it's a shorter answer. So I started my own chamber, I think in 2017. So it's been about 5 years now. It's in Bombay. You're aware of the system, that anyone who wants to practice in the courts usually joins a senior's chamber, learns with them for number of years, depending on how long you want to stay in your senior's chamber. And then as a natural trajectory, at some point of time, starts their own chamber. The reason is obviously that those years with your senior gives you multiple things. One, of course, is the ability to absorb from them advocacy skills, because that no law college, no program teaches you. The second is the to be able to experience on an everyday basis the workings of any court. And so many things go into that aspect of the learning, right? How departments work, how papers move, how do you move matters before judges, how do you gauge urgencies, how do you prepare briefs, how do you get listings, etc., etc. So many details form a part of that learning. The other part is that you also learn how to research, you learn how to read a brief, you learn how to work a brief, you learn how to present a brief, which comes much later. Because as you said, it looks easy, that last 5 minutes of argument in court or 10 minutes of argument in court, which result in an order. But the hours and hours of preparation that go behind that 5 or 10 minute performance is really what is important. And I want to say to all people, young people out there especially, that please don't get carried away just by the glitz and glamour of the 5 minute show or performance in court. That has come after years and years of training. It has come after years and years of probably unsuccessful performances. It's come after hours of training, not just by the counsel who is arguing, but his team, whether it's his juniors, whether they are the solicitors or the attorneys or the clients who have spent time digesting the material, giving him the information, explaining the matter to him, arguing the pros and cons of the matter with him. All that is actually far more important than the 5 minutes you see in court, because that really, in a sense, is the final act. And you can't get to it till you go through these previous motions. So spend your time, spend your energy, and focus on understanding and doing the preparatory work, which is so important, So, to come back to the topic we were discussing, all these things you learn in a senior's chamber. You also get a chance to make people familiar with you. That is, in Bombay, as you're aware on the original side, since we don't file wakalatnama, attorneys brief us, solicitors brief us to come to court and argue the matter. So solicitors should get familiar with you. You should get familiar with them. You should get a chance to argue in court a couple of times so that you get confidence. It's, I think in cricketing terms, it's known as net practice. Solicitors see you perform in court and they get the confidence that yes, this is someone who can be given a matter to argue. All these things come as a part of being in a senior's chamber. When you feel, and it's a slow process, right, which in today's world is a little at variance with how other career paths move, because everything is a matter of instant gratification. So nobody speaks in terms of decades anymore. You speak in terms of seconds or swipes or minutes, right? So extremely a patient process. You need to give yourself time and you need to give the process time. When you feel that you are someone who is known, who has enough independent work, to be able to justify a rent, towards chamber, electricity bills, clerks, juniors, etc. You that's the time you move up. Now, in my case, the process was slightly different in that. So Janak Bhai very kindly told me one day that I think it's time, and I think you should think of having your own chamber. Of course, I very reluctant, because why should you pay electricity bill when your senior is paying it? Resisted it for a very long time. But I think in hindsight, he was absolutely right. And he had the measure of things better, because being independent after a certain point of time is also a step of advancement in your career. So that my experience, since I have had my own chamber, has been extremely good, and I'm grateful to everyone for that. In that, I've seen a lot of work coming my way independently, which I did not think would happen. I have definitely there has been no cause to look back or to have any regrets, and I feel that that is a result of being with Janak Bhai for so long and having gone through the process. Because if you do it prematurely or you do it in haste, then it's a process that can also turn out to be very lonely, very disconcerting. Lonely because, as you know, it's an individualistic profession. You're not in a law firm. You're not surrounded by colleagues and peers, etc. You're really your own master, and you're really, in that sense, doing all the work yourself. So it's very important to build deep connections. It's important to be very familiar with the lay of the land before you proceed to have your own chamber. Is my advice, because it's a step which you should not retrace or not regret. And my own personal experience, thankfully, has been extremely good. I enjoy having my chamber. I enjoy having my juniors. I enjoy being responsible for a matter, being able to think about the matter from every perspective, whether it's the judge's perspective, the other side's perspective, the client's perspective. Yeah, it brings a very important zing, so to say, to every matter, that you have to ensure that you have given it your best shot, and then whatever happens, of course, is out of your control. Now, to come to your second question, which was what would you tell someone who would like to start independent practice? And as you mentioned, there are various routes to go about it. In large part, I think I've told you what were my considerations, which would be similar to what I would tell anybody else. But I would urge everyone to keep one thing in mind, that don't start independent practice till you have experience in one way or another, by which I mean that either you've been with a law firm for a fair few years and you have had the chance to understand litigation thoroughly, how the mechanics of litigation work. You've had a chance to work on sizable number of matters. You've had the chance to either appear yourself a few times or brief seniors or both. Alternatively, if you're not in that setup, if you don't want to join a law firm setup, but you still want to do litigation, the other alternative is to then join a senior and gain the experience from there. Of course, an ideal combination would be to do both. Is that to be in a law firm for a few years, to see it from that point of view, because solicitors, attorneys have an extremely important role. They really, their contribution to the matter can make or break a matter, because when they bring the matter to the counsel, the pieces are all set. The material is already in. You can't, as a counsel, alter the facts. You just have to work with whatever facts you have. So all that is in the making or in the hands of a good solicitor or a good attorney can really change the fate of a matter. So ideally, you should have some experience on both sides. You should work for a few years in a law firm. It's invaluable experience. You make connections, you make contacts with people who will then hopefully support you if they find you good when you start as a counsel. You learn so much. You understand as a counsel, when you join counsel practice, what it is that an attorney is looking for from their counsel. And then you go to a senior and you gain experience in his chamber or her chamber for a few years, and then go into independent practice. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to start being an independent practitioner from a young age or in your 20s or in your early 30s. There are enough examples which everyone is aware of people starting in their late 30s or in their mid 30s, late 20s, who are doing very well. Number of years doesn't matter as much as the quality that you bring to the practice. And that quality will come only if you have these 2-3 kinds of experiences under your belt.
Thanks so much for answering that question in such great detail. And I'm sure it will be beneficial to everybody who is generally wanting to know or aspires to start counsel practice. Now, today you are one of the most go-to counsels, foremost go-to counsels at the Bombay Bar, especially in high-stake and complex commercial disputes. What I want to ask you is that we don't see that many women on the commercial side who do extremely well and are role models. And there is this huge disparity in the legal profession in general, which everybody is aware about. But especially on the commercial side, it's even more stark. Is there any conscious effort to bridge this divide, or does it still remain an unrecognized problem?
Firstly, thank you for the kind words. I don't know if I fully deserve them, but thank you so much.
I have appeared before you, so yes, I can. I'm saying from my personal experience.
Thank you, Shivam. So, Shivam, that's a very it's a very difficult question to answer. In that, if I was to be absolutely candid with you, my short response would be that yes, there is a huge disparity in that there are hardly any women on the original side who have a arguing counsel role. Whether there is any effort to bridge or recognize this problem, I personally don't think so. As a practitioner for the past how many ever years and as a continuing practitioner, not in Bombay at least, whether it's an unrecognized problem, I would say I don't think it is thought of as a problem. I think it is an issue that nobody really thinks about. So that is the level of, in that sense, disregard to the issue. Now, I understand where your question is coming from, because the rest of the world and the rest of the legal profession, even in India, by which I mean law firms, are really women centric, where women are at the helm, more and more women are leading from the front. Now, take the example of law firms in India, whether it's corporate law firms, more so litigating law firms as well. The ratio of men to women is certainly skewed in favor of women in most places. There are lots of women partners doing extremely well. I personally know that a lot of the big law firms who have women partners support their women partners tremendously. They support their partners, and of course, then they also support their women partners. This has not trickled down to counsel practice, unfortunately. The reasons I think we all know. I don't need to elaborate. It is traditionally an all boys club profession. There are latent biases. There are apparent biases which exist at all levels of this profession, starting from the judiciary downwards, right up to even the client at times, though far less with the clients, because as I said, that in the balance of the legal profession, women have quite a dominant position. So clients, not so much, but certainly when it comes to judges, the lower judiciary, when it comes to solicitors, sometimes, it's definitely something that exists. And I would be lying if I didn't acknowledge it. It's unfortunate because every day you see a lot of talented people. And this, again, I'm not restricting myself to women. I'm saying talented people, men, women, who don't want to join the bar, who get dissuaded after a few years because they are not seeing the support or encouragement. Instead, actually, there is an active sort of bias to move people who are not connected to the profession out of counsel practice, which obviously is very tough, especially when you see your peers doing extremely well. So, in a real sense, if one has to be a meritocracy, like the law firms are by and large, that bias has to be displaced. And the bias is not just a bias against women, it's a bias also against unfamiliar faces. And I think that is the root cause of the problem. It is the tendency to go to people who you know of or you have heard of. And I think that discourages a lot of talent from coming to this field, which is very scary and unfortunate, because this is the field which needs the most talented people. It's like keeping the most talented doctors out of the field of surgery. So it's unfortunate. And if you ask me what is being done about it, I would say nothing. I hope it changes, and I hope it changes in our lifetime. But yeah.
So, what would you like to tell young women, many of them watching the podcast, who wish to join counsel practice? Any advice for them?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I would tell them that be very sure that you want to do counsel practice, because it's a decision that you will have to rethink every single day. Also, be sure that you want to do it after having weighed all your other options, after having tried other things which are also maybe not as attractive but attractive to you, because it is a profession that doesn't remunerate you immediately. As you know, it has a long gestation period, anything between 5 to 10 years before you actually start reaping some remuneration for all the work you do. I would also tell them one other thing, which I personally found very useful in my experience, is that if you do come across bias, if you do come across differentiation, I would not hold on to it, because that only makes you bitter. I would let go and I would get on with my work. Because if you hold on to it and make that the focus of your attention, it's not going to help you. The problem is too big and the problem is too prevalent for anything but a systemic change to alter it. An individual focusing on it only loses sight of their larger purpose, which is to succeed in the profession. Now, I hope this is not sounding like the coward's way, and I don't want to sound like an individual cannot make a difference. Of course they can make a difference, but there is a time for you to establish yourself in the profession, and a time for you to take up cudgels on behalf of the cause that you believe in. As a young junior, your time is better spent uh, in integrating yourself into the profession, if you want to continue in it. Otherwise, of course, as I started by saying, that you be very sure that there is not something which is equally attractive to you and which you're enjoying, because it is a very tough place to be in. And it is something that makes you question your decision on an everyday basis. Also, have a very good support system around you of friends, family, senior, because that goes a very long way in sustaining you down this road.
Uh, that was inspiring. And earlier, you mentioned that nobody counts, the experience in terms of years and decades anymore. And so I do want to mention a decade and a half, 15 years of practice as a counsel, and you have done it all. You have handled the most complex of the matters. You have done so much pro bono work as well. You have also been appointed as an arbitrator by the Honorable Bombay High Court in several cases. What have been your larger learnings in all this experience?
So much to learn, and learning on an everyday basis. I'll start by saying that the older I get, I feel the more I need to learn and the less I know. And that, I think, is the single biggest takeaway from this profession, is that it doesn't let you get complacent. Every single day, you're reminded that you have a long, long way to go, and you must keep your mind open to learning every single day. But the generic aside, on a very specific basis, I think it has made me a very objective person, which in that you tend to disassociate yourself from adjectives and focus on the issues at hand, which is very important, which is a very important skill, of course, for a lawyer, but it also makes you a far more balanced person, where you're not swayed by rhetoric or adjectives being bandied about. Hard work, as you know, as any lawyer knows, any law student knows, is the keystone of this profession. My senior always says that a lawyer's life is 90% hard work and 5% luck and 5% brilliance. There's no substitute to hard work in this field, and this is, you're not in the field of being a tech genius, or not that sportsmen don't work hard, they work extremely, extremely hard. But this is, in a true sense, you are slowly, slowly, slowly climbing up a mountain, and nothing but hard work will get you to the top. You can't substitute brilliance for hard work. It's just not going to fly. Persistence, I think, very important. If you want to remain in this profession, you want, especially in counsel practice, you have to be persistent, you have to be tenacious, and you have to want something to a fault. Otherwise, when you look around you, right, unlike maybe 20 years ago, even, or 15 years ago, there are so many options. There are so many interesting things to do, which will give you far quicker rewards, that this just doesn't seem worth your while. And a lot of patience. It's that is another keystone of this profession, is that you have to have a lot of patience. Not just because it takes so many years to succeed, but also because in dealing with your clients, in dealing with the other side, in dealing with the judges, in dealing with your own attorneys, you cannot be someone who loses their cool, even when the situation warrants it. So I would say those would be the things that come to my mind immediately.
Thank you. And I hope, that some of the students who are watching this are taking notes as well, because you won't get, such detailed insights from, I mean, generally, which will be so accessible to you. And I'm really grateful to you, Ankita, therefore, for, agreeing to be on this podcast, and it will benefit so many students. A lot of students also want to apply for internships at the chambers of a council. And I mean, now there are two ways. One, you could join a council, and second is a senior council. So there, then they, consider various factors that they could put in their CV and how do they apply actually. You have a lot of interns yourself. What would you like to tell them in terms of the entire application process, and what are the qualities that you look at in an intern?
Right. So personally, my criteria is not something, it's not about your education qualification or, the number of activities you have done in law school or otherwise. Uh, because I was given an opportunity to intern with almost any senior or that I applied to, without any questions being asked, only on the basis that you want to do an internship and you want to gain that experience. My own criteria is that someone wants to intern at my chamber, and the timing suits them, and the chamber, they are most welcome to do it, because frankly, as a law student, you're too young. It's too early in the day for a criteria to apply to you. This is something which is not you're not applying for a job, you're applying for a experience. It's almost like an educational experience on the practical side. So if you ask me, for me it does not make sense to apply a criteria to a possible internship applicant, because really the shoe is on the other foot. They are applying to you so that they can gain the experience, not because you can gain anything from them. So, but generally, I think the same rule is followed by most law firms and most seniors. I think that therefore, when you're making an application, of course, it's a good idea to set out, your academic career, not in too much detail, in short sentences, just to give the reader a glance of what you've done. If you have participated in extracurricular activities, again, just a short list, not very long, and indicate clearly that what you wish to gain from this experience in 3 or 4 sentences, because I think that's really important. It gives the reader an idea of whether that what you wish to gain is available with that person or that chamber or that senior, and then the time from when to when you would like to intern. But other than that, I would tell the law students not to worry too much about establishing their credentials, because they are really not being put to test at the stage of being of applying for an internship. It's their time to learn, and any person who is being applied to, if they have the time, definitely do take on the intern.
Well, if all the internships were like that and so accessible, it will be so easy, for the students to have that access, to law firms and chambers. Um, yeah, lastly, as we come to the end, although you have already shared your bits and pieces of reflections and learnings from counsel practice, is there anything that you would like to say as parting words of wisdom for our budding lawyers?
Well, I would tell young lawyers this, that it's very, very fascinating to be in the study and practice of law, but it can also be very, very taxing. So have patience with yourself and don't give up on the process. Also, don't abandon or lose sight of the fact that only if you're willing to work hard consistently, not hard 1 day a week or 2 days a week, you have to consistently work hard, that law is the right profession for you. Because as I said, there's no substitute for hard work. If that is okay with you, if those base criteria are okay with you, law today is a great place to be. Not not just in counsel practice, but there are so many diverse roles, as everybody out there knows. There are general counsels of companies. There's so much legal work with non-profit organizations that's available, with institutional setups like WTO. Arbitration across the world is picked up in a huge way, and the institutions are doing extremely well, both abroad and in India. Then, of course, there are the law firm setups, which have also changed drastically from 10, 15 years ago, and which offer great opportunity. I think everybody knows that law is one of the best paid professions in today's day and time. And of course, if you still have the urge to argue in court, counsel practice is available. It comes at a slightly higher price of time, patience. Uh, but it's something that is unmatched when you're arguing in court. The satisfaction, the adrenaline rush, the joy that you go away with at the end of a successful or unsuccessful argument is incredible. And frankly, I've still not seen something equivalent. So keep those things in mind. And yes, I'm sure that everybody out there will do extremely well.
So thanks a lot. Thank you so much for doing this, for taking out time from your busy schedule, and for inspiring our budding lawyers to strive for excellence and be more socially aware and responsible citizens, and especially women who wish to start their own counsel practice and carve a name for themselves. And the learnings that you have shared, the reflections that you have shared from your own journey will benefit our budding lawyers for years to come. It was an absolute pleasure to host you on the podcast, Ankita. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Shivam. I had such a great time talking to you, and I congratulate you on doing this exercise for everyone out there. It's definitely very, very useful for young people. And I know that so many people have come and told me how much they have enjoyed listening to your podcast.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for having me, Shivam.
Thanks a lot.